So the first special factoring pattern that we're going to deal with here is the difference of two squares, right? So difference, again, that's our fancy math word for subtract, right? So we're basically going to have this certain number that's squared, right? And you know, what's the difference of these two numbers that are squared, right? And so the pattern here that the last slide showed us is that this is going to be a plus b and a minus b, right? And so let's go through these three problems and I think realize that this is actually pretty simple. Okay, so notice in part A, again, it's a binomial. I just have m squared minus 4. Okay, so there's no m term. It's just m squared and then a constant. Okay, and so let's maybe identify, what's the base that's being squared here first, right? So you can identify this maybe as m squared, and then this would be minus 4, right? So I could write that as 2 squared. Okay, and so at this point, I'm just going to now use this special pattern, right? If you want to use the a plus b and a minus b part, I guess your a would be m and your b would be 2, right? So I would just write this now as m plus 2 and m minus 2, okay? And this would be your final answer, right? So now we can always go and check our work here. So maybe I'll check all our work in black. So I'll just go ahead and FOIL this. M times m would be m squared. Our outsides would give us negative 2m. Our insides would give us positive 2m. And last times last would give me a negative 4. So when I combine like terms here, I end up with what I started with. So I know that I am correct. Okay, let's check out another one here. Okay, so I have 4p squared minus 25. All right, so if I'm working on factoring and I'm not on a slide that says, factor using the difference of two squares, well, what we really have to realize is that this number 4 is a perfect square and this number 25 is a perfect square. Also, you can think of p squared as a perfect square, right? So we want to write this as a certain value that's being squared, okay? So 4p, I could write this, let me write it as this. Instead I'll write it as 2p, or the quantity of 2p being squared, and then minus, well, I could write 25 as 5 squared, right? So if we're using this pattern here, my a would be 2p and my b would be 5, right? And this is a plus b, a minus b, right? So I could write this as 2p plus 5, okay, and 2p minus 5. Right? And that would be how I can factor that, right? So let's just go ahead and check with FOIL again. So 2p times 2p would give me 4p squared. My outside here would give me a negative 10p. My insides here would give me a positive 10p. And last times last would give me a negative 25. So when I combine like terms, I'll end up with 4p squared minus 25. Okay, and so I know that my answer is correct because I just derived what I started with. Okay, and the last one. All right, I have 50 minus 98x squared. Okay, well, 50 isn't a perfect square, neither is 98, right? But these numbers here, 50 and 98, they're actually both divisible by 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 2 out, all right, and I'll see what's left over. So if I divide this number by 2 and this number by 2, we'll just see what I have left. All right, so I'll take out the 2. I have 25 left, and minus, this would be 49x squared. Okay, and when I look at this number and this number, I say, well, hey, those are both perfect squares, right? So I'm just going to rewrite this now, maybe as 2 parentheses. Instead of 25, I'm going to write this as 5 squared, and then minus 49x squared. I think I'm just going to write this as 7, the quantity of 7x squared. Okay, and so now at this point, I can think of my a term as 5 and my b term as 7x. And so I can write this as that difference of two squares pattern, right? So it's the a plus b and a minus b, right? So again, this will be now 2 multiplied by 5 plus 7x, and then 5 minus 7x, okay? And that's going to be my final answer. Now, obviously, I'll go ahead and check that with FOIL here. I'm going to go back and circle my final answer over here. Okay, so I'll maybe check this with FOIL. So I always like to leave the 2 till last. So I'll write this 2 out. and then I'll FOIL this part, right? So 5 times 5 gives me 25, right? The outsides here give me negative 35x. The insides here give me a positive 35x. And last times last would give me a negative 49x squared. Okay. When I distribute the 2 here, I'm just going to save a little room. I know that these are going to add to 0, right? And so when I distribute the 2 here, I'll end up with 2 multiplied, I'll end up with 50, excuse me. So 50, and then 2 times negative 49x squared would be minus 98x squared. So I started what I ended with, right? So I know that I am correct.